round 2 of the regional championships in Portland. Zhang at the top with Eldrazi Ramp against Hunter Ovington, Orzhov Blink. Really excited for this. Zhang CFT Sock has some counter spells in the main deck. This is interesting. These are spell snares.
Yeah, and this makes a lot of sense. Having a little bit of interaction, even in your ramp deck, is pretty good. And Spell Snare is in such a great place in Modern right now.
All right, we see Hunter starting things off with an Aether Vial, old signature of Modern that has fallen off until recently.
Yeah, we haven't seen it in a long time, but we finally have a good enough creature deck to really want to incentivize that. It also really needs the mana. Threats have trended down in mana cost recently, so you haven't maybe needed his Vials much, but this deck has a lot of 3s.
And on the other side, Ray just Utopia Sprawl, Divination mode on Null Drifter, accruing some mana and some cards, Overlord of the Baelmerk, another permanent with counters for Hunter that is just saying, okay, I think I want to play a lot of turns, but against Eldrazi, I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the nice things about Overlord is it's your card advantage engine, but you can also just sort of turn it into a 5/5 very quickly, right?
Yep.
Sort of the fastest draw Hunter here has is Felia end of turn 2 into impin this Overlord attack Flicker, but you can also see Flicker Wisp on 3, which is the same speed, right?
Picking up Aven Interrupter off of Overlord of the Baelmerk, having that card face up is going to create some sub-games.
It really is, and it's going to sort of force the hand here as we do see another Utopia Sprawl coming down. I love this from Ray. You don't want to go all in on one land because of cards like Flicker Wisp.
Yep, and look at this. Another Evoked Null Drifter. Is Ray going to miss a land drop?
Maybe. It's a little hard to make it out. I can definitely tell the Kozilek's commands in hand.
Okay, they're thinking, which has me thinking it's either a fetch land or something like that.
Yeah, and it looks like it is a Misty, so we are going to be doing some fetching here. Ray down to 17 seems, so we are going to be doing some shocking as well. And to Ancient Stirrings.
This is one that it is not a given in the Eldrazi decks right now, which is a huge surprise to me. How do you not play Ancient Stirrings all the time?
Yeah, I know. For people like you who played a lot of Magic back, in the 2016s, there was talks from players like this card needs to be banned in Modern.
Look,
it's too
I'm going
to
pop my teeth in and really tell y'all a story about Ancient Stirrings.
But yeah, so you haven't seen as much because players have been wanting more higher impact cards. And one of the things that, we didn't really mention because, it's such a thing that players always do is there's no Devourer of Destinies here for Ray. That is how we made room for these Ancient Stirrings is, listen, I think this is a better card selection card.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense to me. And Ancient Stirrings picks up a Talisman of Curiosity. Ray is just ramping the good old-fashioned way.
Yeah, and this is, something that's really powerful that this deck gets to do and matters a lot in post-board games. This isn't just come up here, but against cards like Obsidian and Charmaw, big parts of the format, that's why they can be liabilities, and you're seeing players move to things like Molten Rain.
And I think something that sticks out to me is it doesn't look like Ray is very interested in using something like Ugin's Labyrinth in the face of Flicker Wisp or that Ghost of the White Orchid. Or Phantom of the White Orchid, rather. These are cards that are a huge liability, or if you put 2 cards into one land.
Mm-hmm. We are going to see, looks like Hunter is going to actually, instead of Flicker Wisp and the Overlord, it's going to go after the land, getting that Utopia Sprawl gone. Looks like we're just making sure, I think the Utopia Sprawls are on different named colors, so we want to make sure we're getting the one that we wanted to get.
Yeah, that makes some sense. And a lot of this is going to be Hunter having to weigh pressure versus disruption.
Yep. And it makes a lot of sense, too. We're getting danger close to 7 mana. That's where things really start to get out of hand for these Eldrazi decks.
Okay, sure. So Talisman of Curiosity comes down. That's mana number 5. Another Talisman, 6.
Knocking on the door, but no land for turn.
Oh, that's really tough, especially in the face of that Aven Interrupter.
Yeah. Now, it looks like Ray has Emrakul the Promised End, Emrakul the Promised Hand, Kozilek's Command as some of the cards in hand.
Oh, Kozilek's Command? Really tough if it gets plotted.
Really tough. That is not the one you want over there. Emrakul the Promised End, really tough to plot as well for different reasons.
I mean, that one doesn't sound so bad to plot.
Well, they get a cast trigger, and then you cast it again when you plot.
Yes, of course.
And so, if you're Ray, that sounds not bad to get plotted at all.
All right, Hunter does have an Instep Emperor of Bones off the Aether Vial. Just trying to find more opportunities to push damage. That could start going after Null Drifter, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's like a pretty good thing to get back. All these things are mana sources right now. And we talked about the Promised End. People, I think, disrespect my good friend, the Emperor Bones, a little bit when it comes to the graveyard interruption. When you need specific types, it's good at picking those apart. So right here, we're seeing a massive damage swing, a blowing up of a land in a way with Utopia Sprawl, and just now also the Emrakul the Promised Land is going to be a little harder to cast if the game goes much longer.
Good Lord, that's 11 damage.
Yep. That's a lot quick.
That's a lot of damage. And we do have the Aether Vial on 3, which is going to be even Interrupter mana. Ray has to find something real high impact, real right now.
Yeah, and it's tough. I mean, I think Ray's hand, the last card was Karn, the Great Creator, one of the Secret Lair old border Karns. And that's going to give us access to some cards, but these decks aren't like the Karn decks of old. They don't have this wide 15-card sideboard plan. We have a very lean, mean Fighting Machine sideboard when it comes to Ray this weekend.
Yeah, and this is something that I think we've seen a lot of higher-level players do, is rather than going for a huge spread of checking for every possible situation with Karn the Great Creator, they have some very committed Karn plans, so they still get to have a sideboard in a format like Modern, where making sure that you have haymakers for the right matchups can completely swing a game.
It looks like the other Overlord came down and we're grabbing another Emperor Bones, which means we could null it Drifter again with that other one.
Oh my god. Okay. The Overlords tick down on instep. Null Drifter back to the graveyard. Ray counting their mana.
I think Null Drifter is supposed to be exiled due to the finality counter, but we'll take that in a second.
All right, so here's that Kozilek's command.
I love
Just
this.
cycling it. Just cycling it.
Yeah, you can do 0 on Kozilek's command, and the base mode is you scry X, then you always draw a card. So Ray's saying, hey, target X cards in graveyard 0, scry X. I just need to draw a card because I need to get out of this spot. You know, it's a hard play to do sometimes, but it's the right play a lot of the time.
I mean, it's a Kindred Instant in Yard for Emrakul, so it's not like it isn't advancing their game plan.
Ancient Tomb.
Of sorts, but it is not going to be enough as Ray picks them up, and we go ahead and are going to a game 2. Is this the nightmare matchup for Eldrazi?
It's interesting. You know, I've heard from some players they are not bothered at all by this matchup, and the other ones
like
are
in a real way or like a cope way?
But like in a very real way, I've heard some really good arguments, but that's also both directions. That's the thing.
Right? Yeah.
Both players. I've seen them be like, "This isn't a huge world," and I think what I've heard that makes the most sense to me is that the Orzhov deck has games like this.
Yes.
Right, where I can get on the board quickly, I have low fail rate, and I can interact enough to sort of keep you at bay and get across the finish line.
Okay, so it feels to me like Ray is the one who really needs to find a way to adapt to what it is that Hunter is doing. Talk to me about their sideboard. Is there anything here that is actually going to help them that much? It looks like a lot of this is pointed towards the mirror.
Yeah, a lot of it's pointed towards the mirror. Unholy Heat, a great way to interact with some of these creatures.
Sure.
We're able to actually get Delirium online pretty easily in this deck, so it's going to be 6. What's one of the interesting things about sort of playing against the black-white deck is there aren't a ton of things you really want to Unholy Heat that aren't, you know, Felia or the Overlord most of the time.
Oh,
because
right,
a lot of the creatures already got their value. So it's like, yeah, I want to kill the Flicker Wisp, I want to get the Recruiter off the board to the Solitude.
That's not what you're bringing in removal for.
Exactly, yeah. And we see here that, you know, Hunter at least wants to know what Keen-Eyed Curator does. And as you see, that card got passed across the table to one another by the player there. That's something that
That's a Bloomburrow special.
Yeah, and, you know, it's a body that can get on the board, but really the big thing about this is, you know, it's kind of like the sequel to Scavenging Ooze for these decks that are green, but only technically so, right? When you think about it, Ray's deck is sort of like a 3-color, or 4-color deck, pardon me. We're kind of Teamer with the colorless, and that's really hard in these sort of things. So I imagine with that, and then Engineered Explosive is something that Ray can get on 3 and, you know, can clean up the battlefield very cleanly. Same for 2, which is another big mana value we see in this matchup. So I can imagine both those things. I'd be curious if Ray wants Consign, because you can consign those return triggers off of Felia and Flicker Wisp, which means if we go for our synergies, it could be a way to sort of get a little cheeky thing, a cheeky moment happening. And if you don't have a lot of cards you want in the matchup because your main deck has a bunch of clunkers, then that could be a way to go.
Yeah, it's really interesting where it can even go after some of the like activated abilities of something like a crucial Aether Vial turn or something like that. That sticks out to me as possible. I also think Keen-Eyed Curator against Emperor Bones, which we saw do so much work in that last game. And looking over on the other side, does Hunter even need to sideboard? I mean, even Interruptor's fine.
Yeah, well, we have, 4 consigned memories, which are there for the Eldrazi matchup, like we mentioned at the beginning of the round. So those are obviously going to come in. That is 4 here. I would be surprised if Hunter doesn't bring all 4 in. And then after that, we have some cards you could theoretically bring in. Aven Interrupter, like you mentioned, is pretty nice. That's something that can come in. White Orchid Phantom, you probably want, blows up the double lands. I don't know how much you even really need it once you have like these 4 consigns, but if it's here, it's probably coming in. You can make room or whatever. You have plenty of cards that are sort of situational in these Orzhov Blink decks. Or I guess in this case, Esper Blink, pardon me. And it's going to be something that you're going to want to bring in, but not the end of the world if you don't draw it.
Yeah, my suspicion, having 4 consigned to memory is a pretty loud signal that Hunter doesn't think it's the buy. Maybe his line just lined up, his draw rather, just lined up really well against the half of the deck that Ray drew. But he does feel like he needs a lot of help against them. And I feel like there are a lot of cards he wants to get out of his deck as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, there are plenty of things you can make the argument for, right? But you kind of just want to trim down a lot and have access to some of these. The one big one is like Skyclave Apparitionist, and it's situationally pretty good, but isn't the greatest when the games go long. I imagine that one's probably going to get the axe, at least the first one, But a lot of these other things I'm imagining trimming on, and including probably Aether Vial. We don't want to get caught with that as our only mana source versus Karn, especially on the draw.
Yeah.
On the play, I imagine it could very easily come back in. It might be a situation, too, where the Aether Vials just stay because they are so powerful. But it is a way to sort of lose a game that, can often be quite good.
And there's a bunch of stuff like Fatal Push where it's just like, what are we actually doing here?
Yeah, those cards just go in and out for sure. So,
all right. Well, if you want to learn more about upcoming Magic events and flash sales, you really want to sign up for the Star City Games newsletter.
Yeah, it's going to have all the information on the upcoming events, set releases, and so much more.
Right. Sometimes they're very fast news updates. There's all kinds of sales where you can save a bunch of money whenever you're picking up Magic products. If you want to learn more information about this, go to starcitygames.com/newsletter.
Yep. And it's on the screen there as well. We'll see you all in Charlotte, March 7th to the 9th.
Ooh, could not be more excited for that one.
RC Part 2.
I know. Oh, yes. We've got the graphic for it. March 7th to March 9th. Your birthday.
That's right. I'll be there. No better birthday present than good Magic. So that's all I ask y'all to bring.
Right. It's right in my backyard, too. And really, we've seen the format Modern change so much over the last few weeks that it's very easy for me to envision a world where this tournament looks so different from this one, but it's still diverse and awesome.
Yeah, I think this format's going to inform a lot, and with the release of Aether Drift, like we talked about, there's a lot of cards that players were pretty interested to try out this weekend that, they're going to be hitting the streets testing on, and we might have breakout weekends there. So you have to join us there, and if you can't join us in person, make sure to tune in here for coverage.
And looking at Ray's opening hand, we see Hunter take a quick mulligan. It looks like Ray is taking a more conservative approach to ramping and really just wanting to make sure that they have a ton of resources going into this game with a couple of Malevolent Rumbles and some lands.
Yep, and, that's kind of what you're looking for, right? I just want to make my mana, progress forward, and then stick, a big thing or two and call it a day.
Okay, Hunter has one on the bottom, says he's ready to play, and we have a quick commercial district from Ray.
Got a little surveilling going on.
I think that's a talisman?
Yeah.
It's interesting, right? Whenever you have Imrical in your deck, Artifact in Yard is not a given.
Yeah, it's kind of hard. Malevolent Rumble does a lot of the work in that regard. So getting that here also to me is a signal that Ray has stuff we're going to do with our 2-mana burst the next couple of turns. Because, Rumble gives you a mana and sets up, double spelling pretty easily. So pretty telling. If I was Hunter in this spot, I'd be like, okay, there's some other accelerant in hand.
Right, yeah. It's just like, okay, what are you planning on doing for 2 mana if not that?
And nothing for turn 1 here for Hunter. The deck doesn't have many 1-drops besides Vial, Ephemerate, and Fatal Push. Like we mentioned, Fatal Push almost assuredly gone. Ephemerate, not the best thing on turn 1. So this is a pretty common thing you'll see from these Blink decks. And part of why they do play Vial is just to have a 1-drop thing to play. And this is just one of the best 1-drops of all time.
Right. We see Malevolent Rumble from Ray flipping over. All right, at least 1 land and a Null Drifter.
Okay, so Commercial District, Ugin's Labyrinth, and Null Drifter, all pretty reasonable options here. It looks like we're going to go for the Null Drifter and just keep on keeping on.
Yeah, and this is Ray being very loud in that they just are prioritizing quantity of resources. Whenever Hunter is trying to break apart any sort of synergy that Ray might have, Ray is saying, fine, what if I just have 11 lands or ways to tap for mana? What are you going to do against that?
Yep. We're seeing here Ray really tanking on what they want. Looks like they're going to go with the Null Drifter. get the spawn.
Quick fetch from Hunter, and like you said, not anything on turn 1, and a lot of that is because this deck is just trying to win on the back of card quality. All the cards are fine or better, but they generally, for fine or better, you need to spend 2 or 3 mana.
Yep. And you're seeing Hunter here get the Meticulous Archive. That's that blue for Consign. Open deck list, so, you know, Ray knows this is something that's definitely they're going to have to fight through. But that means, you know, hey, when the time comes, we're going to have Consign mana.
Ooh, is that a very fast top or just a very fast think about it?
I think it's a very fast think about it. I'm a little interested, too, to think about something that we hadn't talked too much about, which is you need a good number of blue sources against cards like Sowing Mycospawn. That's a card that can really mess up these blue lands. Listen, if you're all in on like one Archive or one Hallowed Fountain, which players sometimes do in these kind of matchups, like we'll see from the energy decks maybe later this weekend when it comes to Jeskai. But it looks like we have a couple blues, so we're not totally dead to a Sowing Mycospawn.
Okay. And Hunter liked the card he saw, Shocks in a Godless Shrine, and is going to kick off playing to the board with Overlord of the Baelmerk impending.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a standout card here in Modern from Duskmourn, and it hasn't seen a ton of standard play just yet, but, I mean, what an impressive card we've seen here. I'm sure players are looking a little closer now in Standard. You know, they're like, okay, maybe I overlooked this Overlord a bit. And
that was a very fast grab of Skyclave Apparition over Boggart Trawler. I'm a little surprised.
Yeah, this might be just we have enough land type stuff, and while Boggart is good, I want to have an out in case a Karn comes down.
Oh, yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense. Yep, totally. All right, Sowing Mycospawn from Ray getting a second copy of Eldrazi Temple. All of a sudden, they're knocking on the door of hard-casting Null Drifters.
Yeah, and that's when things get really tough really fast. And there's a White Orchid Phantom going after the Temple. We saw in Game 1, Ray has a bunch of basics. 3 is the total count.
This is definitely a deck, if you're going to play something like this, you have to know what's coming.
Ooh, and Ephemerate, one of my favorite Magic cards, coming down on the White Orchid Phantom.
Sickos. Sickos.
I like Flicker.
Yes, you do.
Yeah.
Yes, you do. And that is your right as an American.
Trigger.
You're telling me. All right, Ray gets those first couple of forests, and despite having a bunch of basics and paying some respect to this, they're getting low on them.
Yeah, I mean, you know, having 3 basics is big. I mean, lots of Modern decks just can't do that when they're more than one color, or 2 colors, pardon me. You know, and Ray is like technically 4, you could argue. So it's a big sign that there's a lot of respect going on in that regard. And, you know, the Ephemerate's going to come off rebound here in a second. That's going to blow up another one of the lands. It's going to be a tough spot.
All right, so it doesn't look like Ray is interested in casting a big spell this turn or jumping up in mana with Ugin's Labyrinth, so they're just going to lead on a Malevolent Rebel to give them a second Eldrazi Spawn.
I'm going to have to correct you. Ray would love to cast a big spell.
Well,
Ray just can't.
it's complicated, okay?
Yeah. Listen, we're all working through these hard times as Ray just gets another land.
All right, so that's Malevolent Rumble gets an Eldrazi Temple, though. And if they don't play it out, it does have the mode where you can sort of burst mana with it, right? Where you just play it and immediately tap for 2.
Yep. Now, we are able to have 6 mana when it comes to Eldrazi, which means Sowing Mycospawn could be kicked here.
It's not bad. Hunter does have 2 blue sources, only 1 black source.
Yeah, I mean, we could go over that and fight there. And also just, that's a good way that you get a double land into play, search another double land.
Yeah.
I'm kind of working through it a little bit here. But I think Ray maybe just has, like, Null Drifters and the Emrakul's in hand.
Might see the really interesting cast an play Ugin's Labyrinth and print something under it in order to sort of say, all right, Hunter, this is what you should target.
Oh, yeah, I like this a lot. We're just playing the Labyrinth as a land.
Sure.
And Null Driftering, drawing 2 cards, and attacking with Sowing Mycospawn for 3. Get in there.
No, this is great. I really like this. This is Ray just, again, committing to that plan of trying to have a glut of resources. As we see the White Orchid Phantom get blinked again. Commercial District, the next victim, as Ray gets their 3rd and final basic.
Yeah, and I like this here. We talked about Unholy Heat from the sideboard. It's, you know, even though we know Null Drifter is like a card that Ray has a lot of and there's more of it, Unholy Heat's a card that we're caring more about right now.
Uh-oh. We're starting to get to Avalanche Riders territory, right? Okay, no, Flicker Wisp going after an Eldrazi Spawn instead of the White Orchid Phantom.
Yeah, I think this makes a decent amount of sense. Like, it's a kind of the similar thing, and, it's a blocker-ish on the battlefield, and your Overlord's coming down in just a turn or two.
Yeah.
And so, it's going to deny mana.
Yeah, that makes some sense. Just a pass back of the turn, and this is something that Flicker Wisp is able to do almost in a Snapcaster Mage-esque way, where it says, great, I have found my one high-impact card, and I am just going to use it over and over and over and over.
Looks like Ray.
Right.
Looks like there's some questions about this impending trigger.
Yep, and you can just see. All right, does this get put on the stack? The read I'm getting is it looks like it might just happen, but we'll see. Whenever you're playing a competitive RDL, it can be really hard to judge.
Yep. Yeah,
in the literal sense, not. I mean, being a judge is hard work. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I was gonna say, from Ray's body language, it seems like they're like, just tick your card down.
It's fine.
It's also one of those things where it might have been a player says something like, Overlord down or whatever, but doesn't actually move it because they're moving cards around.
Yep.
These sort of things happen all the time, and we just can't know because we can't hear the players.
Yep. Big turn coming up for Ray, though, where this is going to be the first turn where they can comfortably cast a big 7-mana Eldrazi if they want to. And I can see we're starting to knock on the door of Emrakul, the Promised End. I think we're one short.
Counting the double land from hand, I think we're one short. I could be mistaken. It's a little hard to make out every card in the graveyard, but I think we have 4 card types right now. I mean, Emrakul's at 9.
Ooh.
And we have 5 lands, 6. So I guess we're 2 short if that's the case. Maybe I miscounted here, but we're going to play a fetch land.
Okay, yeah, and this is exactly what we were talking about before, where Ray is prioritizing holding that Eldrazi Temple for the Emrakul turn.
Yep, and I want to note something in the hand of Ray. Ray brought in the Nature's Claims post-board. I really like this. Overload the Bailmerk's one of the ways you lose the game. We talked about, like, very quickly pressuring you. And we talked about how maybe Aether Vial will stay in, maybe it won't, who really knows. It's also one of the things where if your opponent keeps, like, a one-lander or Vial hand, you can sometimes just get a win.
Oh, yeah.
I like this for Ray. Looks like Ray's probably done a decent amount of deep planning for matchups like this and is trying to get every piece of the Buffalo, which we see them do a lot to a lot of success.
Right, all right. So we see the attack for 3 with the Sowing Mycospawn. Ray thinking in their second main phase. Oh, no, Hunter actually blocking, trading Flicker Wisp. Very loud about the kind of game that Hunter wants to play here.
Very, yeah. It might also just be trying to set up the Overlord in a turn 2 to get that sort of value back incoming. But Hunter's going to play a long game.
Yep. Okay, so we see White Orchid Phantom serve for 2, rate of 14.
Now, this is one of the issues when you don't have your Aether Vial draws. It's harder to deploy your whole hand. We talked about a lot of 2- and 3-mana cards here in the deck for Hunter. Combine that with only being on 4 lands, it's just going to be hard to double spell.
Right, this is a spot where your cards are good, but as you hit the mid-game, you do want to be double spelling. You want to be able to develop some amount of pressure, which the Overlord is moving towards, so it's not like this is atrocious for Hunter. But you want to deploy some pressure as well as interact with what your opponent is doing. And look at this. We see Instep Ephemerate after Ray fetches a tapped Stomping Ground.
Okay, this will flicker the White Orchid Phantom. We're out of basics.
All right, some thinking to be done.
I'm curious. You might go after the colorless land. Might go after the red. It's only a single mana land here, but
maybe Kozilek's Command and Response?
Yeah, popping the Scion.
Yeah, something that you kind of take for a given a lot of the time in Constructed is an Eldrazi deck having access to colorless mana. Ray just has a bunch of green at the moment.
Yeah, and cards like Utopia Sprawl, you demand that you sort of have a lot of these colored sources, and we're really happy to have a lot of these basics the way this game's played, right? But it isn't free, like you're saying.
Okay, well, here is that Kozilek's Command. Ray saying, actually, I don't even need Stomping Ground. Go after it. I'm going to make a bunch of Eldrazi spawn, scry a bunch, draw 1, and keep it moving.
Yeah, and probably get to the hard casting point. I'm curious here. We mentioned this earlier. Hunter grabbed the Skyclave Apparition instead of the Boggart Trawler, right? So that also means Hunter values that Skyclave very highly, and the Boggart Trawler would have been pretty reasonable as the game went on here. I thought it might have been a reason where we just had, other things in hand that did that, but It's looking like, you know,
Oh,
this Emrakul.
consigned a memory on the Kozilek's command.
I love this. Do not let Ray sculpt.
God.
Do not get pressure on me. Look, you're on 5 lands. You're going to have 7. You're going to get one big thing here, but I have plenty of solitudes and ways to answer those big creatures, so...
Ray's starting to get shallow on resources on the table.
Yeah, I mean, these ramp decks, you know, you spend a lot of resources on trying to get out something big, and if you can put them in top deck situations, they have good ones, but, you know, there's a lot of disparity between good and average here. Okay,
so we're counting out, that's 6 types. We have Kindred, Instant, Land, Creature, Sorcery, Artifact in the graveyard at the moment.
Yep, and then in play, we have 5 lands that make 1 amount of mana and 2 for Eldrazi. And I believe that's Emrakul the Promised End mana, cast trigger. We're just going to double check real quick.
Yep.
Very easy to forget the Kindred on Kozilek's command.
Look, Ray promises.
Yeah.
This is the end.
As we are going to see Solitude come down, answer to Emrakul the Promised End. Now, that means that won't be on the board anymore, but Ray does gain 13 life. And with only 2 pressure right now when it comes to Hunter, it's going to take a bit, and Overlord's going to have to do a lot of work.
Yeah, this is super interesting, where this also means that Hunter ran out of cards.
I love this from Ray saying, hey,
wait, on your upkeep button.
Yeah, I'm going to blow up one of your blue lands, and then you're going to, sorry, your black land, and then you're going to fail to find. Yeah. A weird play from Hunter, but Hunter's navigated this game pretty well so far. I'm not sure, you know. No, but Ray here, I mean, getting the good value there.
Right, so right now, Ray is actually in control of Hunter's turn because of that trigger from Emrakul the Promised End. Hunter got rid of the rest of his hand to use Solitude to exile the Emrakul, gain Ray a ton of life, and then on upkeep there was that Ephemerate hanging out, which targeted the White Orchid Phantom, which forced Hunter to destroy his own black source. And on the end step, Overlord of the Baelmerk unlocks, becomes a creature, and we go to Hunter's quote-unquote unpossessed turn.
Yes, and Hunter drew Overlord of the Baelmerk on Ray's turn, so nothing that Ray could do in that regard. That also means his Boggart Trawler is a black land we're able to grab if we want to get that, but we got a White Orchid Phantom instead.
Oh, this is unbelievable. And that extra turn might have actually just been good for Hunter.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't a whole lot Ray can do, and this is one of the problems sometimes. Emrakul the Promised End, incredibly strong in these kind of matchups, but if he gets answered and they don't have a lot of resources for you to really work with, well, you know, you get a lot of life, you do your thing, you move on.
Okay, Ray's back down to 20 because of all that life gain from Solitude, and does have that Nature's Claim we've been talking about to go after the Overlord of the Baelmerk, and Hunter doesn't have a lot back.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a tough spot.
At this point, Ray's really just wanting to hit land drops, it feels like.
Yeah, and Ray has Kozilek's Return in hand. How many red sources
Oh, yeah, I know. You caught me looking at the deck list.
Yeah, I don't
Not
think there's
more. No more.
So it's just Utopia Sprawl.
Yes.
That's our out. Okay.
Utopia Sprawl is the out. I'm checking the artifacts.
We
There's
have one
talisman of Impulse.
Okay.
Okay, so I believe, depending on if they had to leave in Utopia Sprawl's post board. Also not a given to me.
True. Yeah, definitely could see that's something that you could theoretically cut.
There's also a Kozilek's command in Ray's hand and only one colorless source on the table.
Yep. And it looks like Hunter decided to leave in the vials. We talked about, like, maybe that's something that Hunter might do to make space for all of these cards.
All right, 4 of them. Ray falls to 12.
3 turns left in this game at the current pace. Ray drew a Cavern of Souls.
That's colorless.
Yeah,
that's colorless.
That's colorless. That's huge. Also, blue for Null Drifter if we draw that.
Ooh,
you might want to invoke it, you know. That's a little cheeky, but all right, Kozilek's command will be for 4 here when it comes down. The question is, does Hunter have something like Aven Interrupter to mess it up? Which Enchanter comes down as a land?
Disenchanter. I'm sorry. I promised myself I would ruin the vibes with that. All right. 4 comes in. Ray to 8. Kozilek's command for 4. Hunter letting it resolve?
Yeah, Hunter's taking a think. I just don't know if this is a how did this happen to me think or I have interaction think.
Yeah, this is the spot where if you have something like Aven Interrupter, you don't feel good if Null Drifter comes down, but he does have Consigned to Memory, a sight for sore eyes if you're a Hunter fan.
Yeah, and that's going to put a lot of pressure on Ray for this draw step to be good. And yeah, I think Ray just has a bunch of cards in hand before that weren't it. Did we draw something that wasn't it? Sowing Myco Spawn. Okay.
That's a way. to keep something moving. Witch Enchanter, the thing that gets exiled. No Flicker with shenanigans. Eldrazi Temple number 4 coming out of the deck.
Okay, this is big for Ray. Kozilek's Command got a lot better. Emrakul, our Promised Ends are easier to cast. Null Drifting into double spelling could all happen. But it's all got to happen in this 2-turn cycle because Hunter is attacking you down to 4 here.
All right. Ray, you've got to show us. What is it? What do you got?
Combo for the sake of combo would be really good right now. As I think as Kozilek's Command was the draw. I mean, we can do this for a lot. One of the nice things about this card is you can sink all your mana into the spawn mode and you're only down 2. We're going to leave up some blue. Oh, it's Emrakul the Promised End.
How about the Promised End mode number 2? It's like we're a Pro Tour.
Oh, but is this a
Eldritch Moon
consign?
again.
Wait, I think if we have consign, we can replicate it.
Oh, nope.
No, it
I'm
looks
seeing
like
some stuff get untapped.
Oh, okay. So I see. We thought about casting Felia, but we
Right.
didn't want the Felia to die to the Emrakul in the microspawn.
Of
So we
course.
decided to keep it.
And Raid, unfortunately, misses the Aether Vial trigger while
Tough.
controlling Hunter's turn.
Yeah, and I like this line a lot because you would maybe want to normally take it up, but there's an Overlord of the Bailmark ×2 in hand. So going up to 4 is actually letting Hunter get there, as Hunter's probably going to take this Vial up to 5 this game.
All right, and with a White Orchid Phantom in that field we've been talking about in hand, Ray can't actually afford to cast any of these spells without leaving themselves dead on the table.
Yeah, but here's the downside to all this. Emrakul the Promised End is still in play, and Hunter's at 12. So the moment it connects, it is game over.
All right, here's White Orchid Phantom. Goes after the Eldrazi Temple, the 4th one.
Yeah, and I think you're seeing why Hunter wants the, consigned memories in the sideboard.
Yep.
This matchup is just not free, and I think I really like this play from Hunter. Hunter's considering Aether Viring and Flicker Wisp to get rid of the Emrakul.
This is such a tough right. It's you can either use Vial, put it in on your turn, and White Orchid Phantom can blow up another land, perhaps raise only blue spell source in something like Breeding Pool, maybe the second colorless source on a Cavern of Souls, or you can do it on Raise Instep, so you clear the way for your flying creatures to get through this Emrakul.
Okay.
Upkeep. This looks like an upkeep Flicker Wisp.
Yeah.
Worthy of note, Hunter at 12. We haven't been talking about that very much, but this Emrakul is lethal.
It's very much lethal. I mean, the card has Trample too, right? Like this Emrakul does, I believe.
At the very least, it can kill Hunter if it connects.
Sure,
That's what we know.
Well, the Sowing Microspawn plays a big part of this. If it has Trample, then Sowing Microspawn needs to get blocked as well.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, and we see Ray on the upkeep with that Kozilek's Command that we had talked about them building towards, thinking about how to use it at this point.
And we're going to have a lot of cards here.
Okay, a lot of draws towards something good.
I think it's important to remember, too, if Ray can't attack this turn,
Yes.
Ephemerate on the Flicker Wisp, end of turn, that Emrakul is gone, and we're in the air for lethal. So there's a lot of good draw steps here.
Okay, so we see Ray, they've left themselves 1 mana. They're scrying with the Kozilek's Command.
Yeah, this maybe was Scry destroy a creature? I'm not exactly sure what the back.
2 on top. 2 on top. Okay.
Okay. Oh, I think this was all in response to targeting the Emrakul.
I agree.
Oh, but I'm. Looks like there's maybe some confusion about where we're at exactly in the game, and we're just double checking. Easy to happen, especially with so many things just happen, right?
Players just trying to figure out or communicating about where the game is at this point. Crucial turn. In so many ways, it feels like it really does come down to this.
All right. Looks like the Emrakul is going to be returning at the end of turn. It was spawns. What's the other mode? Okay, I wasn't sure if maybe we had, wanted to kill the Flicker Wisp or something like that. But I like this from Ray. Just get the mana. It gives you a lot of things you can potentially do.
And at the very least, each mana you spend for X is kind of free because you can refund it so easily. paying a life for Talisman of Curiosity to make colored mana for the Utopia Sprawl.
And that's Kozilek's return. That's going to clean up the
Oh
board.
my god! Oh my god!
An attack from 3 from Hunter. Ray, I mean, we know the hand is double Overlord.
Oh my god!
I mean, this is a game 3 situation. I've never seen one. Hunter has Overlord in hand, and, you know, Lethal staring down. This is a tough spot to be.
Oh my god! The swings!
Yeah.
Picking him up game 3!
Yeah, and Hunter had a lot of good sideboard cards, had a lot of good interaction. Wasn't enough to stop the Eldrazi.
And something I really, really want to emphasize is how much it paid off that Ray just cared so much about every single resource they had access to. They had exactly enough mana to set up that sequence on the final turn where if they were 1 mana or creature shorter, none of that would have worked. They would have lost, and they would be at 1-1. But instead, we have a deciding game.
Yeah, we do. And we're going to take a look at our sideboards here. Take a look at Hunter. You know, we can maybe change something up here on the play or the draw. You have a couple cards that, you know, are, once again, reasonable-ish things to bring in. But I think we're going to probably see Hunter kind of maintain the status quo. We do see Eldrazi Mother Machines. It's important to remember a lot of these are cast triggers when it comes to the Eldrazi, so it doesn't really work there. In the Battle of Eldrazi versus Phyrexians, Eldrazi are winning. When it comes to Ray, though, you know, we saw Nature's Claim come in. We saw Unholy Heat as a card that could reasonably come in. And I think the Keen-Eyed Curator, seeing how those games played, actually might be kind of big just because it's a 3/3.
It's so interesting on the Unholy Heat front, where a lot of times you think you do want your removal more often on the draw because you're going to be playing a more reactive game. After watching how Hunter went after the red sources, playing around Kozilek's command, understandably, that sounds like it could be a huge liability to just have these Unholy Heats stranded in your hand.
That is true. It's a good point to bring up. I think another thing to bring up here, too, is like a lot of players are doing 3 Kozilek's command in their sideboard. I'm sorry, 3 in the main and 1 in the sideboard. Ray just has all 4 in the main deck.
Oh, I mean, it's one of the best cards, right? I feel like in so many matchups, you're going, okay, well, if they don't have Kozilek's command, then that's going to be it.
Yep.
One place you can join us, though, is SCGCon Hartford in May. This is going to be the regional championships, the standard round. And, you know, I'm on the play design team at Wizards of the Coast, so it's going to sound like I have to say this. Standard's been awesome lately.
Yeah, I've been having a lot of fun playing Standard, and hopefully we can all have a lot of fun with you at SG Hartford May 16th through the 18th. You can check out StarCityGames.com for more info there, and make sure to follow wherever you're watching here to see coverage and stuff.
Yeah, a lot of people are qualifying for that one right now. A lot of awesome Magic being played all over the world.
Yep, can't wait. As it looks like Hunter is having to think on this hand.
Oh, that is the look of someone going, okay, does my match ride on this? That's a keep against Ray saying, okay, well, my match doesn't ride on this hand. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm going down to 6. And, you know, this Eldrazi deck mulligans pretty well, all things considered. A lot of double lands means that, you know, even though you do need a lot of resources to typically ramp out big things like Emrakul to Promise In, you have a couple Soul Lands, Sowing Microspawn, a Malevolent Rumble, you're ready to rumble.
Yeah, so Null Drifter is a card that internally, while we were working on this deck, was something that we designed almost intentionally to make sure that the Eldrazi deck could mulligan and be a real contender. We had a bunch of all-in versions with Haragast that haven't quite played out as, you know, they could have, but some of that's because they are not as forgiving when you do have to go down to 6 or even 5 cards. But having Null Drifter to kind of give you an ability to get more resources is what makes you able to play this deck in something that's going to be, 15 rounds of Swiss?
Yeah, especially in combine that with Kozilek's command, like Null Drifter as a 3-mana way to return the Kozilek's command back half. It's huge against these aggressive decks like Energy we've been seeing.
All right, so players starting things off a little bit more tamely. No 1-drop from Hunter again, while Ray has one of his Ancient Stirrings.
Yeah, and Ancient Stirring's really impressive card. I mean, Sowing Microspawn looks green here, but it's the void, not green.
Right, exactly. And this is really one of the places where not having Devourer of Destiny, it feels like it's paying off for Ray, where they get to sculpt their game in a kind of more traditional way.
Yeah, and their hands don't get, clogged up with 7s as much, right?
Yes.
It means you have a little bit less access for Ugin's Labyrinth, but in exchange, you get to kind of smooth your draw out and have less fail-state games, which is going to be a big problem for these ramp decks.
Yeah, and it feels like it's really paying off in the post-sideboard games where we're seeing Ray able to kind of play a little bit of a slower game and play the inevitability role rather than trying to burst out a huge Eldrazi on turn 3.
Shadowy Backstreet, Hunter looking for the goods.
So much to do, so much to see. So what's wrong with Shadowy Backstreet?
Yeah, there's something like that.
Yeah.
I like Hunter's pin, by the way.
It's really nice, actually.
It's really green.
It's that's the type of thing, in a not open decklist environment, you get the chance to just roll up with your forest playmat, your green sleeves, your green pen, black-white.
Esper Dog.
Yeah.
Speaking of Esper, we just put the Meticulous Archive in the yard.
Ooh, sounds like Hunter has a land-heavy hand and is really looking for something reactive.
Yeah, and we talked about before, 2 blue sources makes it hard for Ray to swimming Microspawn to have the blue not be a huge factor. Well, now you're down to 1.
All right, well, Overlord of the Baelmark getting impended on turn 2. Hunter really thinking about Solitude versus Aven Interrupter. What are the worlds where this is a hard choice?
Yeah, I mean, Aven Interrupter is just a card that is very powerful at interacting, but it looks like Hunter maybe is valuing the interaction of permanently answering something off the board, getting that Solitude. Maybe not expecting to ever get to Baelmark again and wants to make sure a quick Emrakul to Promise End doesn't end the game.
Yeah, no, and that totally makes sense. This could be a game where we see Hunter doesn't actually get to do White Orchid Phantom 100 times, and we haven't seen that yet.
Yep. We also haven't seen, Hunter cheat this Overlord out. Every game it's just been, 5 turns later, that's when it's coming off.
Yeah, this could just be one of the games where Hunter's leaning a lot more on pressure rather than disruption, as Ray not really playing a very fast game, just a lot of selection and Malevolent Rumble on 2. Picking up a Utopia Sprawl, it looks like.
Yeah, leaving that Emrakul to Promise in the graveyard, but notably also Kozilek's Return hit the yard, so if we cast a 7-mana Eldrazi, it is going to potentially do 5 damage to the board.
Really big deal.
Yeah, and that matters a ton. That kills everything in Hunter's deck, and that's part of the reason why you're seeing this deck also succeed, is just it gets to play sort of the best Wrath conditionally right now.
Right, and it's something where you don't even have to commit it every time. Sometimes you just get to say, okay, here's Kozilek's command, and then they do the protective thing, and you go, okay, but I won't cast it.
Yeah,
Yay, hee.
Trigger.
All right, so it goes back to Hunter. He's untapped, and he's really thinking about this next play. He fetches with a Flooded Strand. Doesn't fetch with a Flooded Strand. He's thinking about fetching with a Flooded Strand.
Taking a little think.
All right, he fetches with a Flooded Strand. No takebacks.
That's right.
Library's in his hand.
And it looks like Hunter, I think, is trying to figure out about getting a blue land.
I mean, at this point, you have to, right?
Yeah, I guess.
You see Consign is still in the deck. There's one in the graveyard.
Yeah, but there's a Sowing Microspawn in hand for Ray. Which obviously, we're only halfway on the casting it for that moment. And, this Flicker Wisp onto the Overlord is a lot of pressure. So like you mentioned, that might be it. And it might just be we don't have the Consign. And we were thinking about what happens if we lose, our black land too. But there we go. We pick up the Aven Interrupter now, and we have a real clock on the board. Ray needs to answer this.
Okay, and so now a lot of the Aven Interrupter choice makes a lot more sense, right? Because we saw Nature's Claim out of Ray in Game 2, which meant that if the Overlord gets Flicker Wisped, Nature's Claimed, and Hunter doesn't have that fast clock, he is preparing for how things go wrong. But in the world that doesn't happen, he gets to Flicker Wisp and still have the Aven Interrupter for later. I think that long-term planning is really paying off for him here.
Forest coming down.
Oh, you hate to draw those whenever your opponent has White Orchid Phantom. You're like, no, stay in my library, please.
Definitely. And I think we're seeing a little sprawling on there into probably spawning. We'll have to see exactly what Ray wants to do. Might just have bigger hopes for the spawn when it comes to, getting rid of a land. Looks like we're rumbling.
Mumble, umble, umble.
One of the best green cards in Modern right now. Ray did bring in the Consign.
And we saw how much it's not just Ray's ability that leans really hard on triggered abilities. Hunter is also making use of them.
Yep, and then we're going to evoke that Null Drifter, which triggers the Kozilek's return. That's going to wipe the board.
Ooh.
And so while Ray doesn't have anything on the board, neither does Hunter, and Hunter seemed to be very much in on that Overlord of the Baelmerk closing the game out.
Yeah, this is really tough. All of a sudden, it's the ramp deck with a mana advantage and maybe a similar number of cards in hand against a creature deck with no creatures in play. I know which side I have the advantage meter on.
It's tough. It's a tough spot to be. I mean, Hunter has some cards that can line up pretty well. You know, we could see Aven Interrupter do a pretty good job, but once again, a lot of these cards are cast triggers, right? You get a Sowing Micro Spawn with an Aven Interrupter, they're still going to get the land, and when they play it on the next turn for 2, they're going to get a land. So it's a little awkward as Boggart Trawler is going to be the Boggart Bog on the backside here. Oh!
Emperor of Bones?
Is there an Emrakul in the graveyard?
Oh!
There's an Emrakul from earlier in the game.
Wait!
That's 13. All right, Ray needed to hit that last turn or was going to lose the game. Okay.
Oh, my God. Okay, Ray down to 2. What a swing.
That was a huge – and that'd be a moment for Hunter. Hunter's like, dang, maybe I should have put that card in my deck this weekend. That was really good.
Okay. Talk to me.
And Ray is like, I thought I couldn't lose. Now I think it's a little tough.
Yeah, now I don't know if I can win.
Yeah, as Sowing Myco Spawn, I mean, it can come down, it can block, it can grab land, but no, that Emrakul is gone with its finality counter. There is a Null Drifter in the yard, which is important to note, too, for other Emperor Bones.
Yeah, definitely. This is something where Ray's also just trying to keep count of what creatures are in the yard for the sake of the Emrakul, the Promised Ends. They might want to, I don't want to say use more wholesomely, because I kind of think Emrakul's always the bad guy. You know, can't canonically, of course. Canonically, of course.
Nah.
Nah,
she it.
That's true. It's a whole thing, I guess. But making sure later that Ray has the ability to cast the card is something that's front of mind for them.
Yeah, and you're seeing the tank here as we are, going deep into this round. There's 5 minutes left here. These players have been playing a long game with a lot of decisions and a lot of tight choices that need to be made.
Drawing the forest, not so bad anymore when you're at 2.
Yeah, suddenly I'm more happy about the forest.
All right, how about the Sowing Myco Spawn? How do you feel about that one?
How do I feel about that card is a great question, but it's pretty okay here. It can block.
All right, it fetches up an Eldrazi Temp. I take it back.
Yeah, this might be a spot where Ray wants to be like, okay, while this is maybe my land that makes the most mana, yeah, maybe you wanted to grab something different, like could have got Bajuka Bog to get rid of the old Null Drifter from the yard. That's a little loose. You could also get something like a Commercial District, but it looks like we're actually just going to try to cast this Talisman here.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, despite being a white deck or a white-based creature deck, I would say Hunter's deck is pretty good at actually applying those last few points of pressure with the likes of Flicker Wisp.
Definitely. Now Hunter has a 4/4 and compared to a 3/3, wins combat.
And, if Hunter even has another land, we know he has a Solitude.
Yeah, and I mean, you'll deal 1 essentially, right? Oh, sorry, they're gain 1. Pardon me, misspoke. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of good enough. We also know there's an Aven Interrupter in hand, and we talked about how it's a little awkward with the Emrakul the Promised End, right? How they get the cast trigger again. But if you have lethal on board, yeah, if you make this a small game, then that's not going to be the case. I think Hunter doesn't have like some sort of Flicker Wisp type card. We probably would have seen that played. Might also be a moment where it's like, okay, I've got it 1. All right, we are going to see the Emperor Bones attack. Oh, look, Emperor Bones exiles. We're going to get rid of this Kozilek's return. Huge. I talked about this before. Emperor Bones is a pretty real hate card. It's not the greatest card in the world, but it's not the worst.
Okay, we see White Orchid Phantom come down. Looks like it's going to go after Eldrazi Temple. Okay, CFT's third forest not in their hand.
Yep. And it looks like we were just confirming the Utopia Sprawl was on, whatever. Okay, yeah, I want to hit this one.
It wasn't on Eldrazi Temple, I'll tell you that.
It's true. All right, so we have 7 mana, which is the choke point when it comes to a lot of these Eldrazi. And when it comes to card and guard, from what I can tell from CFT's laying out, we have 4 card types, which means Emrakul is not quite online without a little bit of help.
And this is tough because Hunter also has 2 lethal threats.
Yeah.
And Aven Interrupter is huge here.
Aven Interrupter is huge, and notably, too, flying. If we had
Yes.
Kozilek's Command, we could maybe kill this White Orchid Phantom if it were somehow to resolve, make some spawns, chump block, get out of this game. But the Ava Interrupter in combination with that, which is all face up from back on turn 2, it's a big game.
And something I really, really want to commend is Hunter's long-term planning this game. This is something where I really felt like he had a committed plan that's very different from the first couple. So it's not that he's stumbling into these wins, it's that he's positioning his cards according to his plans for a matchup.
Definitely. And playing to the hand that's dealt, right?
Yes.
We saw earlier,
Yes.
it's like, okay, well, I have my blue land for my consign. I want my consign. Well, I don't have, maybe I don't even have it. Also, maybe I don't have time for it.
Yes.
Right? So, really great play here from Hunter. As Ray's trying to figure out how can my great play keep me in this game, as it's tricky, as I think Ray might be even needing to Kozilek's Command here and find, a red spell, which means we need to not use all our mana. Like normally we talked about, you make a bunch of Scions, you cast your spell still.
Can't actually cast Kozilek's Command. Only one colorless source.
Oh,
so
pardon me, yeah.
Kozilek's Return the get for now, and then
Do you have another one?
an Evoked Moldrifter.
Okay, but Ava Interruptor is still a 2/2 flying. Windrake wins limited.
Oh,
And yeah, Ray is like, okay. And we're going to see it from Hunter.
the goal mode, the Windrake,
Yes.
the W for Hunter Ovington advancing to 2-0 over Ray Zhang. What a sick match.
That was a great one.